Not including his documentaries, his television series, and his non-directing credits, Oliver Stone has made nearly 20 feature films so far in his career. It seems like a decent time to look at one aspect of his movies, specifically the performances. With a few notable exceptions, Stone usually coaxes great performances out of his actors. But which ones are the best? Which ones convey their characters most successfully and win us over? While Stone will probably make more movies and thus allow for new contestants, as of 2013, this is my personal top 10 list. But first, this. Now that that's out of the way, here are my top 10. Number 10. Tom Cruise in Born on the 4th of July. This was one of the first times that Tom Cruise went from just a popular teen heartthrob to proving himself as being an accomplished actor. Under Stone's direction, Cruise takes on the story of Ron Kovic, who was paralyzed in the Vietnam War. He becomes delusioned by his nation's different reactions towards the cause to which he gave so much of himself. Kovic suffers from guilt, resentment, anguish, and shock at how everything he valued seems to be discarded, and he embarks on an odyssey to find inner peace. Cruise's performance captures all of that, rightfully earning him an Oscar nomination the year this came out. While Cruise does have a knack for going over the top in this role, there's no denying his power as an actor. It remains to be one of my favorite of his performances. Number 9. Al Pacino in Any Given Sunday. As most people will be able to tell you, Al Pacino has made a long career out of playing characters on either side of the law. But occasionally, he gets a chance to branch out, such as with the role of Coach Tony D'Amato. Stone's take on the world of American football allows for both criticism and tribute. Al Pacino's character stands at the center to comment on how everything is changing too fast for him. Tony is an aging coach who clashes with the various egos around him. He feels control slipping away from him, causing him to fear losing that thing to which he's given his entire life. The paradox of his nature is that for all his losing his family to continue coaching, Tony treats his job with a lot of paternal affection. He strives to protect the players who he regards as his own sons, and for all his stubbornness, he does try to bring his team out of their losing streak. Eventually, his efforts culminate in a speech which remains to be one of the best motivational speeches I've ever heard in a sports movie. Truly, a Pacino performance for his fans to enjoy, even if you've never heard of American football before. Number 8. Tommy Lee Jones in Natural Born Killers. After getting his first Oscar nomination for his role in JFK, Tommy Lee Jones won his Oscar for The Fugitive, where he plays a driven lawman who is still exuberating a calm southern charm beneath his rugged determination. He's often returned to that sort of character in his career, and it's the first sort of persona that comes to mind when I think of Tommy Lee Jones. That's mainly what makes his role in Natural Born Killers so shocking. Keep in mind, this was before his infamous take on Two-Face, so this was Tommy Lee Jones like we had never seen him before. Warden McCluskey is a man barely on the edge of sanity, who subjects his deadly criminal prisoners to constant verbal and physical abuse. All of this violence and paranoia sows the seeds of discontent until everything comes crashing down around him. It's the Frankenstein story like you have never seen it done before. I love watching McCluskey in this movie. Jones makes him into an intimidating lunatic, but the style is so crazy that you don't know whether to laugh or be shocked. There's a particular scene involving him that I actually still have difficulty watching. Natural Born Killers is a vicious satire, pushing the envelope for its time and even by our standards. And it features quite a few brilliant performances, not least of which Tommy Lee Jones. Number 7. Gary Oldman in JFK. I said before that Tommy Lee Jones was Oscar nominated for JFK, but while I don't want to take away from his performance in that movie, I think the Academy missed their chance to properly reward Gary Oldman for playing Lee Harvey Oswald. What makes this performance especially talented and unique is how Oldman portrays an ambiguous character, constantly changing based on who's talking about him. The main characters try to give theories on how JFK was actually murdered or how Oswald was framed. Gary Oldman has to act out most of these different scenarios. In some scenes, he's shooting Kennedy. In other scenes, he's innocent and unaware of what's going on. In other scenes, he knows some information but not enough to save himself. Other times he's associating with these shady characters who may or may not have had a hand in a coup d'etat of the U.S. presidency. All of these portrayals, however, continue to convince us that this is an individual being discussed, not a puppet for story purposes. The trap would be that he completely forgets who his character is, depending on which kind of story he's acting out, but throughout the film, Gary Oldman maintains certain character traits that Lee Harvey Oswald was known for, and these never go away in his portrayals, however much his actions might change. Gary Oldman's disappearance into this persona helps blend fact and fiction in JFK, and even though Oswald doesn't have that much screen time, he leaves a very memorable impression. Number 6. Eric Bogosian in Talk Radio. As I said in my review of this film, Oliver Stone wasn't as involved as he usually is when directing. While he did provide some rewrites to the script in collaboration, this remains to be Eric Bogosian's baby. Bogosian created, wrote, and acted the part of Barry Champlain in this movie, which is based on Bogosian's theater piece. Barry Champlain is a vicious talk radio host who never holds back when displaying contempt for his listeners. Champlain fights with his bosses, his support crew, his angry and bigoted audiences, and his own inner demons. Bogosian was truly the only man to play this character right. Champlain, just like Tony, is at a point where he has had to give up important relationships for his career. He's also faced with death threats on a daily basis, and this is a man who will open a suspected bomb package on air just out of spite for the man who sent it in. Champlain even invites a stoned teenager into his booth to voice his opinions right to his face. The performance is so gripping that when Champlain has finally had enough and begins to lash out indiscriminately, we're completely hooked on his every word and emotion. Talk Radio is a deeply underrated movie, partly because of Stone's expert direction, but primarily because of Eric Bogosian. This concludes part 1 of my top 10 list, so stay tuned for part 2.